When we route any effect, we basically have two choices, inline or parallel. For effects like compression, limiting, and gates, we normally use the inline approach. The entire signal gets affected. In other words, the output of these drums go into a compressor and then that gets placed further through into your mixer. So like I said, this is called inline because in this case, this compressor is in line with the signal. The whole signal goes through, everything gets processed. And this normally makes sense with a lot of dynamic effect processes. However, if you were to split your signal and have it go through unaffected as well, that's what we call parallel processing. Now, I mean, why would you actually want to do that? In corrective dynamics processing, you want to affect the entire signal, or basically doctor or change that waveform. Pull down its peaks or kill the background noise with a gate, whatever. In this instance, you just send your entire signal through, right? However, if you want to just color your sound with compression, you might want to split off your signal, absolutely crush it and get some grunge on that sound, and then mix that back together for some added character to your sound. In a lot of circles, they call this New York style compression, as it was used on a lot of drums in New York studios way back in the day. Let's see an example of this. Okay, so let's see this in action, and right now we're back in Reason. We have a drum loop here. Let's just play that. So you can see that we have, if I flip the rack around, we've just got the output of the drum machine going straight into the first input here. But how about if we wanted to compress that? And I'm going to be using a specific type of compressor. They have a very cool compressor here called the pulverizer, which is not known for its subtleties. It tends to really just kind of crush the sound. So let's have a listen to how that sounds. So as you would imagine, we just take these outputs here and we place it into the input. And then the output goes up into the mixer. I missed it. Okay, so the output goes up into the mixer. And then we'll flip this rack around. And so now this is like we saw in the graphic before, this is when it's in line. This pulverizer is in line with the loop machine right here, the drum machine. Okay, so that's a specific kind of sound that may or may not be pleasing for you. But let's imagine for this example, we really love the kind of grunge, that sound, that really grungy sound. In fact, let's even squash it even some more. Add some more dirt. So we're going for that really grungy sound. However, what we want to do is just kind of introduce some of that grungy sound. Now, we really can't do that the way it's set up right now, but if we flip this back around, a handy little splitter right here, we'll be able to make this happen, right? So we'll just take the output of the drum machine, place it over here. And like we've seen before, when you use a splitter like this, it's taking this main output and split it up into 4 different stereo feeds. So let's take this over to the input. So that's just like if the splitter wasn't there. It's going into here and then through into that pulverizer, and then the output of the pulverizer is going up here. But what I want to do is split off another one over to input number 2. So now what we're going to have is the grunge pulverizer. That's the sound of it coming through the pulverizer, and then the dry sound. So let's see if these are all working. So that's just the grunge sound, and this is the clean sound. So you can see how parallel processing works out really well if you just want a touch of that compression. Of course, that gives you time right up until mixdown to make that decision about how much of that really grunged up sound you want. If this was placed in line, then you really don't have that kind of control. So parallel processing works out really, really well, particularly for drums. Now, depending on the plugin you're using, it may actually be able to do this without any of that fancy wiring around here. Note on this particular plugin, it's made by Softtube. It's a great compressor, FET compressor. And this has parallel inject. And what that means is that within the box right here, you can have full compression, or you could have full dry, or anything in between. So that's really like what we did before, where we were mixing between the two levels right here. You can do that right in the box. It makes it a lot easier to, if you have a bunch of these instances across kick drum, snare drum, vocals, bass, things like that. It just works out really, really well because there's no extra wiring needed. Let's have a listen to this. So here, I mean, you really know a lot of these same things that you've seen before. You can see the gain reduction there, and you notice that it took a while to come back there. That's because the release is a little slow. You could make that a little faster, and then that would return to where it was. You'll notice that everything's very, very similar. Attack and release ratio, you've seen all of that stuff here. Hey, where's the threshold? Well, you'll find that there are some compressors out there that will treat threshold in a different way. This basically has a fixed threshold, and you can drive your input into that threshold by using the input right here. So in this example, if I was to bring that down here, then we probably won't have any gain reduction. Now we're driving it in. Okay, you can see we're passing that threshold because we're looking at the gain reduction right now. And let's imagine we're just going to max that out. I'm just going to mash this signal. And like I said before, with this parallel inject, you have full abilities to be able to change between the completely compressed side or the completely dry side, anywhere in between. A lot of people started calling this New York style compression, way back in the day when some producers started messing around with this and really crushing a drum signal and then just feeding that back in so that you can really have the best of both worlds. You can really crush a signal, but also still have some of the dynamics of the original performance there, but just kind of mix them together. You can either do that with some fancy routing like we did before, or if your processors allow to do it in the box, you can do it with a handy little knob like this.